So I'm just looking now at our page. We've actually started a new Facebook group called Building Better Relationships at Work and Home with Angela and Patty. And that's where we're streaming the video today. And I'm going to look at how I can share that also.
And that's what I'm doing as well.
Right. It's a little interesting, isn't it? So I'm waiting for it to come up on the phone so I can share that. So any of you who are watching today, you can join that Facebook group, and that's where we're going to be posting our monthly podcasts on building better relationships. And Patty is a leadership coach and work-life balance coach. And I'm a love and relationship coach with technical challenges on Facebook. Still trying to work out how to share it on my private page. It's not giving me that option. But anyway. So for those of you who are joining today, have a look at our description. We're looking at the many masks of loneliness. And we've got a couple of links there. Patty's got an amazing couple of blogs. And we'll talk about that later, Patty. But I love the title of it. It's called The Imposter Syndrome. Do you feel like an imposter? So our title today, The Many Masks of Loneliness, is really about why do we wear those masks, and a little bit of a review of what are the causes of loneliness in our world today. So Patty, can you share how did we come to this topic? I know both you and I have deep feelings about loneliness. So can you share what brought you to consider this topic for our group?
Well, with the world today, there's a lot of lonely people. And with the suicide rate up very high, and with it touching a lot of people personally, loneliness is one of the signs. So that's why you and I talked about loneliness and all the lonely people, and that it's something that to both of us is something that we're both passionate about helping the lonely. We don't like to see what's been going on in the world, and also not seeing it to people close to us or around us. So that's why we're talking about the many masks of loneliness, so that people see the warning signs and reach out, may save a life.
Exactly. It's pretty full on. Loneliness actually leads to a lot of situations that after you hear what happens to someone who maybe is in a bad situation or suicide, you think, what could I have done differently?
Right.
And we'll look at a couple of things today that perhaps stop us from reaching out. And the other interest for me as a relationship coach is that I'm seeing people who are dating who may be lonely and are not getting to some of the root causes of what creates that feeling of loneliness. So they date in ways that is quite aimless. And I hope today I can share a few pointers as to get to the root causes of what's creating your loneliness, not just look at dating as a way to go out and find someone to fill the void. So we all use escape as a way to have fun and maybe to avoid some of our loneliness or to avoid some of our feelings. But if you do that in dating, it ends up creating cycles of more feelings of isolation and loneliness or not being able to connect. So I definitely want to share a few reasons as to why that loneliness is there and how to go beyond looking for something to fill the void and looking at creating better connections. So, Patty, can you share the research that you found on the signs of loneliness?
Yes. I may read a few of them, so I'll be looking down. People who are lonely like to shop a lot, and they care about material possessions. They binge watch TV. They feel they don't get enough sleep, so they're constantly tired. A study published in 2011 linked loneliness to sleep fragmentation, which is defined as an awakening that disrupts the normal stages of our sleep. In other words, it's when you can't sleep through the night and are continuously waking up. They take a lot of hot showers or baths for comfort. They catch a lot of colds and they're sick a lot. They feel depressed. They spend a lot of time on social media. A study found that heavy use of social media was associated with feelings of social isolation. Those who spend more than 2 hours a day on social media were twice as likely to feel lonely than those that spent 30 minutes or less on social media platforms. Loneliness is both a cause and a consequence of becoming disconnected from others. Loneliness and social isolation have a strong scientific relationship with the development of mood disorders and depression. In 2010, a study found that loneliness spreads through other people feeling lonely. So if you're hanging out with people that are lonely, you start taking on that loneliness. So it spreads.
That's really interesting because I've noticed in general in the dating world, I don't date, I'm in a relationship, but I'm around people who are in the dating scene, and there's a sense of negativity, and that is part of that. It's that contagious effect where if other people are having bad experiences like ghosting or people not being authentic, so they lie about stuff, or they basically just cheat and date a lot of people, that starts to generate a contagious feeling of, well, this isn't really a safe place or a place where I can be authentic and not wear a mask, because you don't know if people are lying, so then you start to wear a mask or start to be
dodge them as well because they're dodging you, or dodge other people because that's what's happened to you. It's kind of like a cycle.
Interesting. So we develop behaviors because we're not being treated authentically, or we're not being treated honestly. We develop behaviors to protect ourselves and get cagey as a result.
Yes.
Interesting. So the other thing from the research that was interesting, Patty, for me was if you spend more than 2 hours a day, you're twice as likely to feel lonely than if you spend 30 minutes or less on social media. So we've talked about social media before.
Right.
But it's interesting how when you're addicted to the social media, it actually starts to generate more feelings of loneliness and feelings of, well, I don't have a life. So you get stuck in a cycle connected to the phone or the social media.
Right, or comparing themselves to somebody else. It's kind of funny. Somebody had said to me a few days ago that nobody pretty much puts their dirty laundry on social media. They only show the highlights. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, because I guess people also don't feel like they want to be associated with their dirty laundry. And so it creates a false sense of reality that we're connecting to people through. So we're actually connecting through the mask, not with the real person. But that also creates more disconnect, a feeling of not being able to authentically know the person.
Right, because if you think about it, your friends and knows your friends and your family and your spouse or your partner, they know all of the dirty stuff about you, and they still love you anyways.
That's what's funny in the dating process, because in the dating process, you present this kind of false self, this ideal self. And then as a person gets to know you, we secretly want them to accept us, right? We want that deep, I love you just the way you are, like the Billy Joel song. But really, we also don't want to expose that part of ourselves where we feel like, oh, they're not going to like that. And what if I, release gas in front of them? What are they going to think? And but those are all little bumps in the road that actually develop the connection, and we become kind of too judgmental in what I've seen in the dating process. For a lot of people, they get too judgmental, or they get too fake too quickly, so they won't let that other side of themselves be seen early on, and then it kind of comes out anyway and exposes themselves. So people are not good at lying, basically. Why do you feel, Patty, that we wear these masks? We've already reviewed a few things, but what other reasons have you seen?
I feel that we wear these masks because we're ashamed or embarrassed, and we don't want people to know that we are lonely. So we put up these masks, especially in social media, like I was talking about. Nobody airs their dirty laundry out there. And I don't know why there's that shame or embarrassment. We need to reach out more to people and become friends and get to know people and say, hey, you want to go out for a coffee? You want to go out for lunch? And really get to know people. And I think if we do, there'll be less lonely people because they have friends that they can talk to, share a coffee, share a laugh.
Do you have any tips or tricks, like when, say, for example, because you've done a lot of building bridges in the work arena and the workplace. So, what if you have a colleague that's like a little bit, you don't quite get on with their personality, but you feel like just so you can make a bit more authentic relationship, do you have any tips on how to build that?
Well, I think it depends on the person and your personality. But building better bridges is good for everybody in the workplace. Reaching out and actually talking and realizing they're a human being, you're a human being. We all make mistakes. We all do stupid stuff. Let's move past it. And just saying, hello, how's your day going? Or good morning or good night. Just those subtle little things can make a difference to somebody's day. Totally ignoring somebody is punishment. So just being the better person and reaching out and saying hello.
Isn't that fascinating? You've just made me realize we've withdrawn from some of the formalities, social formalities of face to face working with people and living with people. We've forgotten things like, oh, hi, how are you going? Or good morning. Or how do you
Yeah.
feel today? How are you? We've forgotten those basics because of maybe becoming so connected through digital means. We just sort of take people for granted and don't.
And you know what else is happening too? Through the phone, people text people and then they don't get any acknowledgement back. And that's also causing people feeling rejected, or oh, they don't care enough about me to respond back. That's also happening as well.
Yeah, so they're mixing up what we would normally use in a face-to-face communication with digital communication. And I know I'm really bad at responding to some texts, but my phone doesn't actually notify me for some text messages. I'll get some messages, but I won't get others. And then I get them the next day, and then I'm responding, and I'm thinking, gosh, they must. I don't know what they think of me, but I'm thinking I can't keep up with the messages.
I have a friend that I know it's going to be 3 days later she responds to me. And that's okay, because I know that about her. And we laugh about it.
It's her brain pattern. Like, oh, I remember that message. She's got a good memory. At least she has the memory for it.
Yeah, she does respond back.
So there's a lot of, there's more messages coming at people today, but it's actually how do you connect in a heartfelt way in replying to that message. And one of the ways to reach out as well was I'm not good with messages on the phone, say, for example, but I might have a thought of a friend. And it can be a thought that comes once and then it comes again, maybe. And those times I know that's time to reach out to the person. So I might just send a text where I just say something like, hey, how you going? What's up? How are you feeling? Because I know that that doesn't happen to me unless there's something there for me to connect with the person. Have you found that you have those thoughts, Patty?
Yeah, I have a good friend. Her and I were born on the same day. We're 4 years apart, but it's amazing. It's like when somehow I know or she knows when we need something, she'll send me a Bible verse, and it's so funny when she sends it. It's like I needed it at that moment. Something was happening in my life. Same, I'll send her inspirational text or say, hey, how's it going? It's really weird, but it's very good, and makes you feel good because they're thinking of you at that moment. And two, when you think of somebody, you should reach out and say hi because there's a reason for it.
It's so important. It's like our heart connection to the person, or our that part of you that's not from your mind. And
Right.
another tip I have for those of you in the dating process or using apps to connect to people, don't get sucked into thinking all of the games that people are playing. Because I hear that too. A lot of people think people use the apps to play games. They do. And I've got more information to share about why people play games.
And when you say play games, what exactly does that mean?
It's when they're saying they want to meet you for like 3 or 4 weeks and they never arrange to meet you. So they start to build up this BS, this story about either their attraction to you, why they like you, or it could be some BS about themselves, that they are a great person and they really have so much to offer you, or they start going into fantasy land about what could happen between the two of you. Or they might get games such as, I really want to see you, and then they never answer the text that you've sent. So some of the games which people we've mentioned before, where you're sending a message and there's no response for days, and then suddenly out of the blue there's a response, and you think they're playing with your mind because they're trying to make you feel insecure or feel like, yeah, I don't really need you. I've got 5 other people that I'm texting at the time, and I've got another hookup tonight, so I'm fine. So you get really, I've seen a lot of people with dating apps go into hysteria because they start making up stories about what the person is doing.
Oh.
And there could be some truth to it, but they don't know. So their mind goes down this rabbit hole and just keeps going. And you've got to stop that and really start to go, oh, okay, so they haven't responded. What do I actually feel about that? Because that's more important, not what rabbit hole the person could be exploring. What you're feeling is more important. Do you feel neglected? Do you feel like disrespected? Or do you feel turned off because this person isn't really engaging? That's the most important bit. Like what you're sharing with your friend, Patty, she's tapping into the best part of you. She's sending you the Bible verses. She's inspiring you because you're about inspiration and you give that to others, and she's reciprocating that back. So what I see in the dating apps when people go into game playing, it's like they are talking to their lower aspect. And then if you're at the receiving end and you go down that rabbit hole, it doesn't go anywhere pretty. So you have to really see that, oh no, I don't want to go there, and go into a more deeper connection about what you are feeling in the moment.
Do you think dating apps cause more loneliness?
There's actually research to prove that at the moment. I saw some Australian research from a few years ago, and it's not only the dating apps, but it's the hookup apps, the apps that are sometimes for dating, but also for hookups. And people start to feel the app is more about hooking up than connection, and they start to feel like they're missing that actual connection that they're looking for, but they're so used to hooking up that they just take that. So it depends on what your intent is when you use the dating app, because I've also seen some people using the apps and being really focused. They cut out the BS when it happens, including in themselves, and they go, well, that's not what I'm here for. And they just get focused and they don't engage with people where they don't feel connection. Yeah. So there's one piece I wanted to share about the the rise in loneliness that we're seeing with a lot of people in globally, because it's a global experience that's happening. And a big influence on that is migration and separation between families. So right now in the world we have more separation between families just because people have left countries over the last 200 years. There's been mass migrations over the last 200 years. And also, of course, we know the current migrations that are happening globally. But families have been separated more because we've got more transport on the planet. We've got planes, we've got immigration happening at a faster rate than ever before in civilization. And what people don't realize is that naturally when you're separated from, especially your parents and your grandparents, but parents, and you lose that connection to your family line, it naturally creates a sense of loss. And I grew up with my parents leaving their homeland, so I witnessed it, and I listened to mum and her feelings. So I grew up understanding that. But now I'm seeing a lot of people are experiencing what I saw my mum experience. And I also felt it in myself. And people look for dating or they look for relationships to fill an emptiness. So if that's something that when you're on the dating apps or you're looking for social connection and you're feeling there's something there, have a contemplation of where might be the deeper roots of that feeling of disconnect or loneliness. Because it may be in your family, it may be something that you're trying to resolve, not just for yourself, but for the family. And I can share as well from my experience, what happened was I realized when I healed some of that stuff for my mum, what happened was that the relationships I attracted dramatically shifted. I was attracting people more like what you're sharing, Patty, like with your friend, where connections were mutually supportive. So often our relationships with our parents can really impact who we bring into our lives. So that's what I wanted to share on the reasons behind loneliness. Was there anything else, Patty, that you might like to give people in terms of um, moving beyond the mask, or anything else that you'd like to share?
I think we all need to be just honest with ourselves and look at ourselves. And if we're lonely, reach out to people. If we see somebody else that's lonely, reach out to them. And just do it with a kind heart, and don't expect anything in return.
Thank you, Patty. When you say that kind heart without expecting anything in return, how does that feel for you when you reach out to someone? Because I know you're really good at checking in with people.
Yeah, I feel really sad because a lot of people, when they think when you do reach out and you're being nice and friendly, they're thinking it's something else. And that's not the case with kind-hearted people. They're just kind-hearted, and they do want a friendship. I don't know where our society changed, where it's thinking that because you are nice to somebody that you want to hook up. That's far from that. And Angela, you know a lot about that type of stuff, but we need to move and change that and go back to being kind-hearted and nice to people. And then I think there would be less lonely people in this world. That's my opinion.
So it's actually creating, what I'm hearing from what you're saying is creating a vision of, when you're reaching out to people, what you would like to experience with them, and making that a sense. Well, if your intent is kindness, it can be just, hey, how are you going? Or it can be an intent for getting to know them,
Right.
learning about,
And nothing else.
and nothing else.
Yeah.
Just getting to know the person. Like, hey, who are you? What are you interested in, and what makes you tick? One of my friends, actually, he has a really great statement. He's like, what are you passionate about? He's a bit of a passionate person. No, not a bit. He's a passionate person. So he always asks a question like that when he meets people. What drives you? What are you passionate about? And I think sometimes people don't have those questions to ask people. So you can also just come up with some stock questions, especially if you're socially awkward, like I am.
Right.
People think I'm not, but they don't know what I've been through. So in my brain, I might come up with a question like, "Oh, so where are you from? Where do you live?" And people might think that's prying these days. But come up with a few different questions. So if you notice that the "where do you live" question doesn't get a great response, you can go, "Well, what brings you here?" Or have some questions set up so you can start breaking the ice. And if one question doesn't get engagement, just keep going and keep trying, because if you have that kindness, it's not going to ever hurt anyone.
Right.
So Patty, I wanted, can you share about how people can keep in touch with you, and also anything about your blog post as well, the imposter syndrome?
Sure. My website is coachingforinspirationwithpatty.com. And I have a lot of different books that I talk about leadership, self-care, work-life balance, and connecting with others. So I have all kinds of different articles that I've wrote about becoming a better person, being able to connect with others. The imposter syndrome, I think, is one of, we're going to have it in the show notes down below. But a lot of us go through that, trying to be something that we're not, or feeling like we're being an imposter. So read up on it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a really great article, that one. I liked how it got me to reflect on other people in my life as well, and maybe why I didn't really connect with them. So that was why I really enjoyed that blog post. And for those of you in Sydney, this December 3rd, 2018, there's a workshop I'm hosting called Healing with Your Mother and Father Process. I'm doing it before Christmas, so you can shift any of that old energy and maybe have a happier, silly season, as we call it in Australia. It's definitely silly down under. And I've got the link in the description as well, and you can check out that workshop and see if it's something that you would love to experience.
Oh, I wish I was in Australia so I could come and see it.
I know, I wish I could do it virtually, but it's one of those touchy-feely workshops where you've got to experience it in person.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be hosting it 3 times a year in Sydney, and maybe I'll be coming back to the US to do some as well. We'll see.
Great.
Thanks, Patty.
Thank you, Angela.
Great. So anybody, if you are watching the recording on Facebook or listening to the podcast, and you have any tips or questions that you'd like to share, please share those. And you can also join our Facebook group, Building Better Relationships with Patty and Angela. And we'll put some of the podcasts up there as well with some other posts and different tips and strategies. So thanks everyone for joining, and go out there and connect.
Yes, make the world better.
Thanks, Patty.
Thank you, Angela.